Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Can It Be a Mead? We've got a very spooky vibe this time, kind of unintentionally. I am recording this, if you can't see me on video, by candlelight. And again, this is not my choice. I would much rather record this with lights on in my house. However, here in Oklahoma, we have experienced a pretty good ice storm, and it's pretty much all of central Oklahoma's power is out right now. And if you don't believe me, here's a picture up on the screen if you're watching the video version. If not, it is of a huge tree that has fallen down on my power lines in my backyard, therefore killing all of my power. So I've been without power for about 24 hours now, and I figured why not record this? So again, we're recording by candlelight. My trusty, what kind of candle is this? This is a caramel pecan candle, leading me to be able to see things right now, and I literally have zero other lights. So here we are. For this episode, we are going to be chatting a little bit about some additive flavorings to flavoring / things you can do to your mead to fill out the body. That's kind of like our main topic, and we'll have some little subtopics that break off from that. But we are going to talk about that, and I'm very excited to share what knowledge I have with you guys. So because this is Halloween, and I'm not recording this on Halloween, but we are in the season, I am drinking a pumpkin pie mead that I made back in February, actually. So it's not that old, but it is pumpkin pie flavored. Now, I say flavored because I didn't really use any real pumpkin. I didn't use any actual pumpkin product. I used a pumpkin pie flavoring from Amaretti, which I believe, does its job. So let me tell you kind of what I'm getting from it. Ooh. Okay, this thing, it doesn't have a huge pumpkin pie taste to me. It's partially my fault, in my opinion. It has more spice, has more of the clove, nutmeg, the baking spices popping out from it. I do like the honey character in those spices combined, though. Right now I'm getting like this. Oh, that's good. If I take away the pumpkin side and I don't think about pumpkin, I just have spice and honey. And that's pretty fantastic, actually. There isn't a lot of pumpkin pie character, though, and I know that's hard to do because you need a lot of pumpkin taste. So my brew here, it didn't really achieve the goal I wanted, but that's okay. That's not to say that the Amaretti product that I used is bad by any means, because you can make lots of great things with the Amaretti product. I just didn't get a great fulfilling pumpkin pie flavoring out of this one. That's okay. If I were to do it again, I would try to introduce pumpkin pie in a different way. Maybe brew a traditional mead, stabilize it, add pumpkin pie filling possibly, or pumpkin pie or pumpkin chunks to get that flavor. Maybe roast the pumpkin, do something like that, and then add spices. But that kind of takes me to our main topic. This isn't going to be the longest episode of the podcast, but that's okay. So, how do you fill out the body on a mead or a wine? You can do this in a couple different ways, and I've been experimenting a lot recently with a bunch of different ways to fill body. Now, there are some, quote, natural ways to do it. The one that I really think about is bananas. I've heard that if you add bananas to your mead, you often fill out the body of it, and you help make the mouthfeel different. Now, that's something that I want to experiment with in the future, but I have not done that yet. So, not pumpkins. I have that in my brain now. Bananas can possibly add some body. That's unknown to me. Other options, if you add things that have peels, so let's say apples can change the mouthfeel or the body of the mead by adding the pectin to it. So pectin is like its own thing found in pears and apples and all those other fruits. The skin is not where the pectin comes from, but the skin itself can provide some body change to a mead. Any fruit kind of does that in this case. In fact, going backwards a little bit, that banana idea that we chatted about is also, well, I've heard of people using bananas, the fruit, to add body. I've also heard banana peels. So I don't know if the peels add the body or if the banana actual fruit does. But there are some natural ways to do it. Basically, you want to add something that will, this sounds so stupid, but you want to add something that adds more to the mead. If you just add more, I guess you could add more honey. That adds. If you just add more water on top of your mead, you're not going to fill out the body. If you water it down, of course, that takes away. So adding honey, anything to change the gravity, anything to put more viscous things like pectin into a mead will fill out the body. Okay, now that's natural ways-ish. Here's some not so natural ways. A lot of wine makers will add wine tannin to it to make it more tannic, which tannic value makes you feel like it has a bigger body. That tannic value is very, very important for wines, especially because when we think of a wine, a good wine, it is multi-dimensional. It is, it kind of coats your mouth in a way, in a good way. A word we use a lot with winemaking is buttery, and so buttery to me has its own mouthfeel, its own texture kind of thing. The same thing could go for meads. We don't really use the word buttery for meads because honestly I'd be a little weirded out if somebody said my mead was buttery, unless I was intentionally going for that. But we do have the same ideas. So you could use wine tannin in a mead, theoretically. You could also use a variety of other products. For example, some people will use maltodextrin to fill out the body of a mead, and that is literally the use of maltodextrin. It's not a sugar. It is a body powder body filler for meads and wines and beers and stuff. It's pretty easy to use. You don't have to use a lot of it to get the desired effect. There's also in the same vein, you can use lactose. Lactose is a non-fermentable sugar, so it does have some sweetness to it. The yeast can't eat it, and it also adds body. Lots of times when you see milkshake stouts or anything that like sounds like it has a big body in it, then it probably has maltodextrin. No, it probably has lactose in it. So lactose it's just like milk. If you think milk has its own full body too. So those are two like white powdery options that you can use, and they're totally great. I've used them both and had great success with both of them. You can also go the other route of adding like aging things on wood, for example, on oak spirals, on oak chips, cubes, in an oak barrel. Any of those things can also add that tannic value that we talked about earlier with the wine tannin inside. Those are great options. But you have many different ways to achieve a fuller bodied mead. Am I missing some of them? Absolutely. I don't have all the answers, and I'll be the first one to tell you. I am learning a lot about this too. And most of the time when I learn something, I end up going and experimenting with it, and I encourage you to do that too. Don't just take my word for it and assume that maltodextrin is a great body filler. Because to me, it does a lot. It helps the body. But you might use maltodextrin and go, I don't really like that. That didn't really do what I wanted. Or I didn't notice a big change. So that's just my thing to you. Make sure you actually go and test these things so you learn for yourself and you have that experience. Why is it important to have a full body on a mead or within a mead? Well, to me specifically, the body of a mead affects its drinkability quite a bit. If I'm drinking something that's really watery or that has a I'm thinking more specifically thin mouthfeel, it doesn't feel as enjoyable to me. If you think about maybe a hydromel, which a hydromel, if you haven't made one before, is a mead below 7%. Most hydromels, unless you do something to fill the body out, are really kind of watery and therefore, to me at least, not very good. So I enjoy light-bodied things maybe during a really hot day in the summer, something like that. That's the only time I'd like a light-bodied mead. The enjoyability that comes from a coat your mouth, full body, kind of stair-stepping mouthfeel mead is really interesting. It kind of adds and shows that your mead is complex if you have that layer. I have a whole category on my score sheets for my mead making things I do where I actually grade mouthfeel. And I have had, out of 10-point range, I've had things score really low on the mouthfeel because they don't really achieve what I want. They don't achieve the depth of that side of the mead. So for me, ultimately, mouthfeel is more of an enjoyability thing. The body, the fill, the fullness of a mead just adds to the richness of it. Does every mead need to be full-bodied? No. If you're going to make a hydromel, you don't really need it to have like a milkshakey taste to it. In fact, most hydromels are pretty good if you carbonate them, because they do end up adding some of that, the fullness that you're desiring ultimately, or at least for me, that I'm desiring. So I often will carbonate hydromels or things that have light bodies if I don't want to add other materials or other ingredients to fill it out. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk to you about some ingredient choices in special circumstances for adding mouthfeel and body. I pulled out this pumpkin pie mead tonight because I have been recently experimenting with more pie pastry-esque meads. And within that, I've had to figure out how to accomplish a pie crust flavor. How do I get a pie crust flavor to pop within my pumpkin pie mead or an apple pie mead or whatever you're making? And I have found that graham crackers are very helpful for this. Now, some of you are listening to this and going, graham crackers, that sounds insane. Why would you throw graham crackers into your mead? Well, I had read about it somewhere in the past, and I was making a peanut butter and jelly mead. And of course, I wanted a bready flavor. I wanted that kind of mouthfeel from it. So I threw some graham crackers in. In a 1 gallon batch, I threw probably 4 graham crackers in, left them in for 4 days, then I racked off of them. It made a little bit of a mess, but the effect of adding that added some baking spices that naturally come inside of the graham cracker. And it also added the kind of viscous mouthfeel, bready mouthfeel you get from a pie. Now, was it super strong? Was it like I was actually taking a bite out of a peanut butter jelly sandwich? No. But it started to get closer to achieve that goal. And that's kind of what I was looking for. I know that I'll never be able to make a literal peanut butter jelly or apple pie or pumpkin pie mead that feels like I'm biting into one of those things, because that just would be a little bit weird. I think I'd be kind of weirded out if I ended up making something that actually had that. It'd be incredible, but it'd be kind of weird. So I found that graham crackers are super helpful for that. They're really cheap, really easy to use. I'm sure you could go crazy and add even more and establish an even heavier bready taste, but I have yet to go that far. Maybe one day. Maybe one day I'll just go nuts and throw as many graham crackers as I possibly can into a mead. That's kind of one way I've figured out how to change a body in special circumstances. You're probably not going to do that with like just a regular lemon mead. If you're making a lemon mead, you're probably not going to throw in a couple graham crackers. I mean, you could, but you're probably not going to want those same baking spices to pop out of it. So that's a very niche, ultimate circumstance, and that's okay. That's just kind of what we run into. In that same world, as you build your body, I do want to dive a little bit into the other important characteristics of a mead. And of course, this is me. This is my opinion. So please don't take this as fact, as the penultimate opinion of mead making, because it's not true. It's just my opinion. Anyways, the other important characteristics and depth things you want to have within your mead kind of fall to, well, I don't have my score sheet here. Well, I'll say this. When I'm tasting a mead, I'm looking for my first thing on my score sheet's clarity. Clarity is not the end of the world. You don't have to have the clearest mead for it to be good. That's just something to consider. You want to have a very clear honey character, and you want to have a good aroma. So when you smell the mead, you want to be able to pick up notes of whatever other flavor you're going for. For example, if you're trying to make a cherry mead, you want it to smell like cherries. You also probably want it to smell a little bit like honey, because ultimately that is the other side of mead making, is honey. So your aroma, your honey character has to pop through that aroma. Your honey character has to also pop within the mead. It has to have some development. I use the word warm when I describe a lot of different honeys, because I do feel like it provides a warming sensation within a mead. Every honey is different. If you're using a mesquite blossom honey, you could probably or should probably pick up some wood-y kind of notes from it. You should get some smokiness from that kind of honey. If you're using a clover honey, whatever variety you find around you, you should get some specific bright floral notes out of that. And I could keep going down the list. But my point is, whatever honey you're using has to have a good character, has to have a clear character within the mead. Can I taste that this is an orange blossom honey? So on and so forth. Same thing for the nose. Then we get to the body of the mead. So we've tasted it, we've smelled it, we've figured out, oh, this is cherry, this is, I'm using a clover honey, that smells good. I can taste the warmth of that honey and the bright floral notes. Now, how does it feel as I actually drink it? Am I getting a experience as I drink this mead? Meaning, from the first sip, do I get the taste of whatever fruit or other ingredient I'm using, alongside the other various things I'm going for? Do I get fruit? Do I get a honey character popping through that mead? And then at the very end, how does it feel? Does it coat my mouth in a certain way? Does it have a full kind of viscousy feel to it? That's another thing that I look for. My favorite meads, I should say, have been ones that have like a stair-stepping effect, meaning that from the first sip to the end, I'm going through like layers of an experience. I taste the sweetness. Ooh, here's some tart. Whoa, that's weird. Here's the cinnamon that's popping out. Oh, that's like a warm sensation at the end. Stuff like that is fascinating to me. Drinks where I just taste it and I go, well, that's sweet, and then I don't have anything else, that's kind of lame. So that body kind of plays into a little bit of the flavor development. And the last one that I always score on is the finish. Finish and body kind of go hand in hand. How does it finish? Does it finish with a bright, good honey character? Does it have, does it kind of stay with your mouth? Is it astringent? Do you have some astringency, lingering mouthfeel within the mead? That is also something I look for. Now, that's a lot of information from the first sip. When I sip this pumpkin pie mead, I haven't had a drink in a while, so when I sip this, I want to be able to experience all those things. And this thing, I'll tell you right now, it's pretty one, maybe two-dimensional. It has some sweetness to it. From the moment I taste it, I immediately get like kind of a bitter fruit note to it, as well as the spices begin to pop out. And then it transfers into this slightly smooth honey character, slightly bright, not very warming honey character, because I'm getting a sour taste. But it's two-dimensional. It doesn't have a lot to offer. I'm looking for something with more layers. This takes experience too. I look directly back at my first meads I ever made or tried, and I knew nothing. And I'm not going to sit here and say I know everything now, because I am still learning. But what I am saying is that at that time, I was a big old dummy, and I couldn't tell you the difference between an apple and a pear taste. And to this day, I might still struggle with some of those things, and that's okay. But my whole path of getting where I am now I've got here because I've tried a bunch of stuff. I've tried tasting things, and I've tried to actually discernibly pick out flavors and characters and body differences and honey differences in a mead, and then I store it in my mead making compartment in my brain, and then I use that for the future. So you need to be experiencing, you need to be trying meads all the time. There are lots of ways to do this. You can, of course, make your own. Go make your own mead, first of all. That has to be a priority. But you can also go out and buy some. Regardless, if you are like me and you make way too much mead, or you make 1 gallon a year, you need to be buying mead for yourself to understand more about it, but also to support mead makers and those people, because obviously they're the ones who create the stuff that sells, and we need to be a part of that team. So trying really nice meads is really going to help you. Trying really bad meads is also going to help you. I am, again, not the master at all this. I'm just giving you my opinion. So we've covered so far not a huge range of topics. We've talked about body, how to establish some body. We've talked about the characteristics of a mead that you are hopefully looking at when you make one, and buying mead and all those things. Let's talk about some simple recipes. That's kind of how I want to end. Well, I'll do one more segment after this, but a couple recipes that I am absolutely loving right now. First of all, one that I'm in the process of making that is going well is actually an apple pie bochet. It's a fantastic mead. I've learned from my previous apple pie meads that the apple pie filling doesn't really achieve the same thing that I want from an apple pie, and using apple pie flavoring doesn't also achieve that. This time what I did was I actually bocheted some honey, made a mead, went through the primary. In the secondary, I took and added a ton of baking spices and graham crackers and 3 pounds of actual apples on top, so I added real apple flavor to it, and let that all sit in there, racked it off, let it age for a little bit, stabilized it, added more honey to bolster the honey character and add sweetness, and I have created, in my opinion, a fantastic rendition of a apple pie mead, and I would recommend that one big time, especially because we're in the season of life right now where we're stuck indoors, and people tend to make more pies for some reason when we're stuck indoors. I guess it's just a cold food or a wintry food. So that's one I would recommend. And of course, I'm always a big proponent of some other holiday meads, like a Peppermint Mead. I haven't talked about this one in a while, but the Peppermint Mead that I made from 2018, which I still have some bottles of, is fantastic. You use real peppermints. I'm sorry, real candy canes, I should say. I made a Peppermint Mead candy cane. They're kind of interchangeable. If you use real candy canes and any type of honey, you melt down your candy canes, you add your honey into that, ferment with some, not a super heavy fermenter, kind of yeast, you will end up with a really great product. So that's a good one to make as well. Those are a few recipes I would recommend. Just get out there and make your own. Look on Reddit, look on any of the other avenues, mead making avenues that you have, because ultimately those people have some really valuable input for your mead making, and they have some really great recipes. I have found some awesome recipes from people. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents with that. So my last little bit, my mead mistake that I have learned from recently, and I want to share with you all, deals with stabilizing a mead. I recently was making a mead, and I started it at about 1.090 gravity. I wanted to stop it at 1.010, so what I did was let it ferment to 1.010. I put it into my fridge and cold crashed it. When I pulled it out, I decided, okay, now I need to add my potassium sorbate and my Camden tablets to halt and make sure just to kill off that fermentation. Well, what I didn't consider is that cold plus white powders don't generally mix in really well. You kind of need a warmer liquid in order for things to mix. That's not like a new theory. Like it's just reality. So I goofed and I didn't realize that. So the potassium sorbate and Camden tablets didn't mix in after I had pulled that mead out. When I had pulled the mead out and like assumed that it wouldn't ferment anymore, it actually kicked up fermentation again because the yeast kind of went to battle against that sorbate while they had time and ability. So ultimately I didn't completely halt that yeast at 1.010. It ended at like 1.004. So my point is, you want to make sure and take and put your sorbate and metabisulfite in before you cold crash, because ultimately that will halt the yeast before they go into cold crashing and mix into the liquid better. Don't try to do it cold. It won't work. So that's that. This has been a spooky-ish episode. If you're watching on video, you probably have been chilling with me here in the Candlelight for a while. If you're listening on podcast world, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. It means a lot for you guys to take your time. So I hope you will join me for some future episodes of the podcast. I have some other ideas for guests, and there's various things to do on here. This is a fun outlet for me to just kind of ramble, I guess, about my various mead making topics. So check out the main channel. Check out the second channel if you want to see all my mead tastings and things that I do. And go support your local meaderies and make some mead, of course. So I appreciate you all. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys next time for another episode. And cheers.